In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I lost 50 pounds in the first 4 months of my fat loss. Now, obviously, looking at those 3 pictures, you can see I've lost more than 50 pounds. In total, it's been 120 pounds, and the 100-pound mark I hit right at exactly 1 year on the dot. Now, the first 50 pounds that I lost was without GLP-1s, without cutting carbs out of my diet, and obviously without losing muscle. So this is me here at 320 pounds, this is me here at about 270 pounds, and this is me here at right about 200 pounds. So let's just jump right into it. This is my story. So I wanted you guys to understand why I actually was so motivated to do this in the first place. So I gained 120 pounds on purpose to play offensive line in college football. And at the time, that weight was a tool. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew why I was doing it, and it made sense for me, right? But my entire life, I had always been the fat guy, and it always weighed heavily on me. Even though I didn't show that to other people, that it did weigh on me and that I was super self-conscious about that, every day I would wake up and I would still manually stretch out my shirts so that they would fit on me. Every day I would bring 2 shirts because I'd sweat through the first one about halfway through my work shift when I was working as a web developer. So then when I stopped playing football, I had to make a decision, right? My entire life I told the people in my life, I'm going to lose the weight. It's just not the right time right now. So eventually I had to make a decision for myself, and that was to go all in and truly finally commit to myself and decide that I was going to fix this before I was forced to. And realistically, my advantage was my urgency. It felt like every day that I was over 250 pounds, it was something wrong with me. And I put everything that I could into fixing that because I was so sick and tired of feeling like this guy in this picture. This was me right after I had my labrum surgery, which, if you're not familiar, is the surgery you get after you dislocate your shoulder. So when you dislocate your shoulder, your labrum tears. So they just went and fixed that. So it's right after that surgery. And I was right around 300 pounds at this point. So I'm not taking you to ask my word for it here. I've lost 120 pounds of body fat personally. One of my clients, Max, dropped 21 pounds in the first 6 weeks of working together. And then another one of my clients has lost 85 pounds in total and counting. And I do want you guys to see, it wasn't just the weight that was affecting me. Obviously, I hated the way I looked. I hated the way that I felt. But on paper, my labs were not looking good. Right? So you can see the red here, the red of my cholesterol, and then I was dangerously close to being pre-diabetic in my 20s, which, fuck man, that's never a point you want to be, right? You never want to be at a point where your doctor's looking at you saying things have to change for you. So this method is for you, and all of the rest of this video is for you if you used to be an athlete, but you don't recognize the man in the mirror anymore. You feel like there's a gap between who you used to be and who you know you can be. And you feel like your body is holding you back in relationships, your career, and from showing up as yourself. You've probably been dieting, yo-yo dieting for years, and maybe your metabolism is running slower than you'd like it to be. You feel like fat loss is harder than it should be for you. Maybe you're on a GLP-1 or you're thinking about one, especially with how popular they are these days. And you're wondering, how do I actually make the results stick so I keep these results long term? And maybe your labs came back, they showed you how bad things have gotten, and it was finally a wake-up call for you. And possibly every metric in your life is working except this one with your health. And I'll be real with you guys, it's just not for everybody, right? I don't want to make my method that I use to lose the 120 pounds, it's not for everybody. So if you just want a 30-day transformation and a meal plan PDF, this is not for you. This is a full lifestyle overhaul. And if you think the only thing that you're missing is motivation, this isn't for you, because I don't believe in motivation. Right? I think there's discipline, but I don't believe in motivation as being the true driver for fat loss, because motivation gets you to Wednesday. And then Wednesday comes, you binge, whatever happens, maybe you drink too much, whatever it may be, then you guilt yourself into saying, I'll just start next week. This week is fucked. So maybe you just believe that you need to eat less and try harder this time. This is not for you. This is a totally different method. And if you want more random tips from multiple sources that are just confusing you, you want to find 19 different things from 25 different people and try to make it all fit, this is not for you. This is an all-in-one method that will help you lose your first 50 pounds at least. So I do want you to stop me when this sounds familiar, right? So this is kind of the reality that I used to live. So I'd be sharp until about 11 a.m., something drops, and then coffee stops fixing it. So I would have a meeting at work, I would have a stressful deadline to hit, or I would have a project come up, and it would feel like everything would just crash, and then my energy crashed in the afternoon, and then coffee stopped fixing that as well. So right about then I would eat lunch, and then about an hour after that I would feel worse than before I ate. It was like every day I was in this food coma, and I didn't understand how to get out of it. And if you feel like this is something you should be able to solve, but you haven't, then this is for you. And maybe you started over Monday, and like I said, something breaks by Wednesday, and then you guilt yourself. You tell yourself this week is fucked. I'm going to start over next week. It's the worst pattern to be in. And you probably avoid cameras. And like me, I made the joke before anyone else can. I made the most fat jokes about myself than anybody else did, because it was easier for me to take the pressure off of what I think other people are thinking, and for me to just say it out loud. So when I made those fat jokes, it was like, well, I think you're thinking this in your head, so I'm just going to say it out loud and kind of break the imaginary tension that I had in my head. Maybe you catch a reflection and the man in it, in the mirror, does not match the man that you still think of yourself as. This was a big one for me. So after I stopped playing college football, I would look in the mirror, and like I said, be over 250 pounds, which was my initial goal. Be over 250 pounds, and I would genuinely feel like I'm looking at not even myself in the mirror. It doesn't feel like at this point, this is who I should be, and that really weighed heavily on me, no pun intended. And every metric in your life is working. So maybe you got the career, you got the income, the relationships, but maybe this one is the only thing that you have left to solve. And at the end of the day, if that's the case, you're not lazy. You're probably just exhausted, and you don't necessarily have an actual structure to follow. And there is a big difference there, because I want you to think about this. You would never just skip work because you were tired. You would never just not work hard at work because you didn't know what to do. You would never not show up for your partner just because you were lazy or you did whatever it may be. Structure, and you need to fix the energy. So that's what we're going to do. So here's the truth that not a lot of people are talking about. So the problem isn't just that you're inconsistent, right? It's the problem is also the sequence. So a lot of the guys living at, whether it be 240 pounds, 320 pounds, 400 pounds, insulin resistance is a massive, massive problem, right? So the doctor will probably just prescribe you metformin for this or a GLP-1, but that doesn't actually truly solve the problem long term. And the problem with insulin resistance, and why we have to solve this first, is an aggressive deficit on top of insulin resistance does produce blunted fat loss and accelerated muscle loss. So by no means am I saying that you can't lose weight with insulin resistance. You can, you should, and after this video, you will if you watch it all the way through. The thing is, when you have insulin resistance, it just makes every input do just a little bit less output for you. So that's why we solved that first. And there's also around 500 less calories that you will burn every single day after you do a crazy aggressive diet without taking your thyroid output into account. So this is actually a study from The Biggest Loser. If you've ever seen that TV show, essentially they take really heavy people, obese people, and they have a competition of who can lose the weight the fastest, which is great, right? It sounds like awesome, like good for them. The thing is, they did a follow-up study with them 6 years later, and they found that they're burning 500 less calories per day than they should have at their body weight, given their maintenance calories, given all of their lifestyle factors. So what this shows us is that doing an improper diet, just trying to starve yourself, do too much cardio, whatever it may be in that aspect, keto, cutting carbs out completely, does have long-term impacts beyond just losing the fat. So this is why how you lose the weight and following the plan that I'm going to give you is so freaking important, because the last thing I want you to do is to lose all the weight and then start yo-yoing, because fat cells do retain an epigenetic memory of obesity after weight loss. Okay, what does that actually mean? Because that sounds like buzzwords, right? What that means is that your fat cells, when you get big enough, instead of just going larger, they multiply. So now instead of having 5 big fat cells in your stomach, realistically, you have a lot more than 5. But instead of having 5 big fat cells in your stomach, now you have 10 big fat cells, which when you lose the weight, obviously now you go to 10 small fat cells. The thing is, those fat cells do produce hunger hormones, and they blunt your fullness hormones. So this is why yo-yo dieting is so bad for people who have been overweight, obese, very heavy, or just a big guy in general, because your fat cells remember how big you used to be, and every one of those fat cells wants to be full. So now you have a bunch of fat cells screaming at you, hey, we need to eat, we need to eat, we need to eat. And that's why every regaining the weight cycle is, or every re-losing the weight cycle is harder than the last, because now you have more fat cells that are telling you to eat more. So there's a lot of advice circulating online, right? And the problem is it's not wrong. It was just built for somebody different. So what you were probably told was just eat less and move more. And the less you eat, the more fat you lose, which generally is true. But what I figured out was insulin resistance means that a super aggressive deficit for fast fat loss produces blunted fat loss and accelerated muscle loss. And people will tell you, just run a calorie deficit if you're fat. Now, the thing is, yes, we do want to run a calorie deficit, but crash dieting on the popular fad diet methods always leads to the fastest regain. So the calories outside of calories in and calories out is highly variable. So while you think I just need to eat less and control the calories inside of the calories in, calories out equation, what you don't understand is that we can manipulate the calories outside of this to make fat loss so much faster, so much easier, and make it so much easier to maintain your new low body weight after you lose all the weight. So that's why how we lose the weight matters massively. Now, other people will tell you to cut carbs to fix insulin. But the problem is carb restriction also suppresses T3, which is your thyroid hormone, which directly slows your metabolic rate. And that is what guarantees that faster regain. So that's where we see the 500 calories reduced burning every single day, like in that Biggest Loser study. So in the MROI method that I'm going to unveil to you in just a second, that's where we fix this in the M phase to fix the insulin resistance. A lot of people will tell you just to add cardio when results slow. Now, there is certainly a point where we do want to add more cardio and reduce calories, but we have to do this intelligently and know exactly what we're doing it, why we're doing it, and when to do it. And like I said, we have the metabolic adaptation, which just means you're burning less calories. So you're burning 500 calories less per day 6 years after you do this crazy aggressive fad diet, right? Whether you're doing intermittent fasting all day, you're slowing your metabolism down, and your results slow because now your metabolism is slowed, you're not burning as many calories. That's an issue because not just does it mean you have to eat less to lose weight, but when you want to go back to maintenance, it makes it extremely easy to yo-yo back up to your previous weight plus interest. And this is probably the worst one, and one that annoys the hell out of me, to be honest, is a lot of people just say, just be consistent this time. Stay consistent. You've probably said it yourself. You say, I just need to be consistent this time, right? But we have leptin, which is our fullness hormone. So when you are losing a bunch of weight and when you are really big, you're not actually going to be your body's not going to be receptive to that fullness hormone. So that means that the fullness signal is produced, right? But you're not actually listening to it. So when you say, I just need to be consistent this time, but then you fall off the rails because you're starving, because you don't actually believe that this is going to work for you, and you're wondering, why do I feel so hungry? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so low energy? Saying to yourself, I just need to stay consistent this time is not a fix for that. So here is what year 5 looks like from now if nothing changes, right? So this is my day 1 picture right here when I was 321 pounds. So your metabolic health degrades further, and every regained cycle of losing the weight is genuinely harder than the last because the epigenetic memory, which means your fat cells, remember, they used to be big, they want to stay that big, makes it harder to lose the weight again, right? So every attempt that you're taking on this, and when you yo-yo back and you gain even more weight, makes the next attempt harder, which is why this attempt has to be the last one. Your testosterone continues to be suppressed because your visceral fat, which is the fat specifically stored around your organs, which is the worst kind of fat, that specific type of fat, visceral fat, converts testosterone to estrogen through aromatase, which is terrible. And there are certain things that we can do to reduce this visceral fat. And your joints will absorb another 5 years of load at this body weight. I remember when I was that big, my lower back hurt all of the time. My knees hurt. My ankles hurt. They were sore because of all of the weight that I was carrying around. And for like me, your doctor reads you a different set of numbers at your next physical, right? So that physical that I got, those lab numbers that I got that I showed you earlier, were truly a wake-up call for me. And the most important part is the gap between who you are and who you see in the mirror gets wider. So not only is it getting worse physically for you, but mentally it only gets worse from here if nothing changes, which is why we have to implement what I'm going to show you in just a second. So this is phase 1 of my MROI method. I call it MROI, and M stands for metabolic. So these here on the left are going to be the results of what this phase looks like. Now, these are not the final transformations of these clients of mine, but just what it looks like when I take them through this phase. So my client Larry went from 350 to 315 going through this phase before we put him on to the R phase, which is recovery. Then my client Gabe here went from 250 to 225 in this phase. Now, the biggest thing that we want to do here is restore your insulin sensitivity. We want to reverse the insulin resistance. And what people will tell you is to run a large calorie deficit immediately. That is not what you want to do, because that insulin resistance is fighting it, and you're not setting up the biological environment to actually see those results like we want to do later. Now, everybody tells you just eat less, move more. I've talked about that a little bit. It's just a simplification, and I wish it was that simple. Now, the scale stops after 2 weeks when you don't fix the insulin sensitivity and you don't fix your energy. And what happens is now your body starts catabolizing muscle, which means that it's breaking down your muscle for fuel instead of your fat cells instead. And then, worst of all, the doctor puts you on more medications. I mean, I don't have anything against doctors. My mother was a nurse practitioner, and she does incredible things. The problem, I think, with the system is that they only get about, 5 to 10 minutes with you. So they don't have enough time to truly help you fix your problems. So what they do is they'll just look at your labs and then say, hey, you need to eat some less food. You need to lose some weight. And then they'll put you on metformin. So the new way to do this is we're going to restore insulin sensitivity first, right? So the scale will now always show progress when we do go into that aggressive deficit, so we can see pure fat loss. And fat loss now becomes faster, and it becomes easier than ever before because your cells have actually become responsive to your inputs. Now, phase 2 of this is recovery. So this is kind of the general results of what this phase looks like. So after M phase, metabolic phase, you go into the R phase, which is recovery. So this is actually my father, Matt, who went from 240 to 215 in this phase. And then my client Carter went from 240 to 220 in this phase. So what typically people do is they'll doubt themselves when results slow. And this leads to them just giving up on themselves and saying, I need to be more consistent, right? They add way too much cardio, they start starving themselves, and then they suppress their metabolism, and then that makes results slow even further. Now your joints ache constantly. So the new way to do this is we're actually going to take stress management techniques and a holistic approach to help you lose more fat. We're going to fix your sleep architecture, because everybody only focuses on the hours, right? Because just because you're sleeping for, say, 7 or 8 hours doesn't mean you're actually entering REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement, which is when you see that deep recovery and GH release, growth hormone release, right? So one of the best ways we can do this is with supplementation. So I do have a favorite sleep supplement of mine. Another thing that we can do with this is to have a nighttime routine, actually, to where we're cutting off blue light at a certain amount of hours. Maybe we're doing something relaxing for the last 15 to 20 minutes before bed. And then perhaps we're using an eye mask if our room is bright. We're using nose strips if we're having trouble with sleep apnea. And then we're using mouth tape as well. I wouldn't use mouth tape if you do have sleep apnea, by the way. We're using mouth tape to help us breathe through the nose, which gets us better rest. And then so you're actually waking up and you're feeling like you are rested. Now, the cool thing of this phase, so let me go back here. How do I go back? There we go. So the cool thing about this phase, the recovery phase, is my client Gabe here, he was telling me that he was getting to go to bed at night and he was feeling like his mind was just racing with so much anxiety for the next day that he just couldn't fall asleep. He would lay in bed just racing. So much anxiety about work the next day. He's working as an engineer at a very large corporation working on rockets. So he was racing, his mind was racing, and he just couldn't fall asleep. And after we put him through the R phase, where we're addressing his stress management and we're fixing his sleep architecture, he's been sleeping great. So that is the biggest thing. And what nobody understands is that the more you sleep and the better you sleep, the better fat loss that you will get. And that will also help you repair your damaged joints. Now, what I also do is I'll help program your actual workouts and routines to help you work out in a joint friendly manner. And then we're also just going to raise your calories burned through NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. The best way to do this is through walking. So just the general thing that I will give you until I can actually look and see specifically what your lifestyle is like is just to walk more. 8 to 10,000 steps is an absolutely fantastic way to get those calories burned. Now, I do realize I forgot to actually give you guys some value here on the metabolic phase. So the way that we're going to restore insulin sensitivity is walking after meals is a big one. Anywhere from 10 to 20, 30 minutes, the more the better, right, is going to help us restore that insulin sensitivity, because when you are insulin resistant, you have too much blood glucose going around in your bloodstream. But when you contract your muscles, when you're walking, when you're doing exercise, that pulls the blood glucose into your muscles. So that way, now you need less insulin to do that, and we're starting to restore the insulin sensitivity. Now, there's also some supplements we can do here. There's some more lifestyle interventions, but if I was you, I would just start with walking after you eat. All right, and then we go into the O, which is optimize. Now, 82% of the people on a GLP-1 will regain the weight within a year of stopping. So the problem is the medication only addresses the appetite, and nobody builds the actual architecture that makes the results permanent underneath it. So my client Daniel here, no GLP-1, he went from 275 to 190. And the problem is, before this, he would say, well, I'm gonna buy random supplements, or he didn't have a GLP-1, but I hear a lot of times, I'm just gonna get on a GLP-1 for it to do all the work. Maybe the doctor puts you on medications like GLP-1 or metformin, and then your results stall because you have no plan, you have no structure, you plateau, you doubt yourself, you give up, and the cycle repeats itself. So the new way here is we have advanced supplementation actually based on your specific needs. Now, the best way to do this is to look at your blood work and then go from your supplementation from there. Some of my favorite supplements for this in this phase is vitamin B1, which is thiamine. So there was a study, maybe I'll link it in the description if I remember, but there was a study showing that high dose thiamine in rats reduced the amount of weight gain with the same amount of food when they ate a high-fat fructose diet, which is high-fat fructose diet is essentially the standard American diet, right? You have high fructose corn syrup paired with high fat, makes it extremely tasty and palatable, like you see in a bunch of junk food. So they put these rats on junk food, gave them high doses of vitamin B1, and what they found was the rats on vitamin B1 gained significantly less weight. So that would be the biggest one here, as not the biggest one, but my favorite thing to do here, just because it is a little bit of a niche tip. High dose vitamin B1 is freaking awesome. Now, we also want to dial in your dieting principle. So this is where we can get into the more optimizations of dieting. So we can get into carb cycling. Maybe you'd like to do some fasting here. We can start to do that. We don't want to get out of control with that. We also will implement some more supplements to do that if needed. And then another thing we can do is implement a specific snack to remove some endotoxins from your gut. Now, that does sound kind of like a buzzword, but what that helps us do is clear out a lot of the inflammation from your gut and actually allow you to process the foods that you eat better, so you're getting all of the micronutrients. And what this shows up as is, instead of feeling sluggish, slow, in a food coma after you eat, you're fully digesting the foods as we're meant to be, and you can finally feel actually energized from the food you eat. So one of the best ways to do this is actually a raw carrot salad. Sounds disgusting, but it is so freaking worth it. And honestly, it doesn't bother me at all anymore. But how you'll do this is you will take a raw carrot, you'll peel it long ways, and then put 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar on there. 1 teaspoon, of apple cider vinegar, and then 1 teaspoon of coconut oil on there, and then salt, pepper, and a little bit of honey if you want it to taste better as well. And that will remove some endotoxins from your gut, improve your digestion, and which the problem with endotoxins as well is that it actually will suppress your testosterone as well and will convert into estrogen. So that is not at all what you want, and it's probably a huge reason of why you don't feel great. Now, The big goal of this phase is to increase your muscle mass while your fat mass keeps on decreasing. So now the result is that the fat loss accelerates on top of a body that is actually prepared to keep it off permanently. And then phase 4, the I, is identity. So a lot of people think that the goal ends at the goal weight, but that's the problem because that's why you're yo-yoing, right? So me, I went from 320 to 205. My client Ethan went from 240 to 165 in total. And the problem is a lot of people reach the goal weight and then they relax. And this leads to regain, restart, repeat. And like I talked about earlier, the epigenetic memory, the fat cells remembering how many they are, how big they were, means that they want you to be fatter than you are right now. So this is where people say, I'm just meant to be fat. There is actually a little bit of truth behind that because once you do get really heavy, you have to plan for that when you do lose weight in a structured way to go back to maintenance calories. So we have a structured way to return to maintenance calories. Identity work is built into the protocol from week 1. So that's why we hop on the one-on-one calls with my clients is we can work on the identity from week 1 and make this a permanent decision here. So by phase 4, the habits that you have are not just habits. It's your identity. It's your lifestyle. It's something you're going to do for the rest of your life. You have fully given up the way that you used to live and you're never going back. And that is the best part because the man who would regain the weight no longer exists. And the result here is that now your results are permanent and not rented. So this is why I am anti-fad diet. I am anti-GLP-1s just by themselves, why I'm anti a lot of the medications that you're prescribed for being overweight, because they don't actually fix the identity and they just rent your results. So this is exactly why I say we need to fix the environment first, right? Because when you lay the foundation the correct way and you have the M phase, the metabolic phase of my MROI method in place, everything else follows. And this is kind of what you can expect here, right? I'm not making any promises here, but this is what it looks like when you have the full implementation to this. Right, so you can see my client Max here, he lost 21 pounds in 6 weeks and the size of his shoulder doubled and his transformation is going to be wild. So what happens here is you fix a cellular environment, and your body pulls from your fat stores easier and that creates momentum. So then your identity shifts, accelerates, and then the consistency becomes automatic. And that's where everything ties in, right? Because let's say week 1, your insulin sensitivity is restored. So you're starting to reverse insulin resistance. Now, I'm not saying insulin resistance is fixed in the first week of this. I don't make crazy promises like that. I only make promises with things I know are possible. But insulin sensitivity starts being restored. Week 2, your energy is starting to stabilize. So the 3 p.m. crash where you feel like a vegetable at your chair or whether you're at the job site, whatever it may be, is starting to stabilize. So your cravings will also start reducing as well. And then week 6 for him, he was down 21 pounds of pure body fat while putting on muscle. So now that you actually understand my full MROI method, there are some things that will hold you back. So before you click off and go start implementing all of this, you have to understand what I'm about to show you next. Damn it. There we go. One of the biggest things is I already know what to do. I just need to do it. So if you're thinking that right now, that is the entire problem. Because if that was the case, you would already be at your goal. And you have not implemented the full system. You haven't fully committed. And you still want to do things your way when that's proven to not get you where you want to be. It is insane to me. And I could go on a rant on this. I won't bore you guys. But the amount of people that say, I already know what to do, I just need to do it, then 6 months later are in the same spot or even worse is ridiculous. Something has to change. And you cannot just dip your toe in the water and just start maybe working out once or twice a week. You have to fully commit. You have been unbalanced for your entire life with your health. So what makes you think that just starting with a tiny little thing like going to the gym or just eating healthier, which doesn't really mean anything, is going to actually fix your problem? You have to implement the full method. That is why the MROI works so freaking well, is because it handles all stages of the process. But the thing that will kill it is your lack of commitment. If you do not commit to do this, you will not see the results, and I promise you that. Another one is I'll just take a GLP-1 instead. This is also a huge problem because 82% of the people regain significant weight within a year of stopping the GLP-1 drug, whether it's GLP-1, whether it's tirzepatide, or whether in the future it's going to be retatrutide. which they all work incredibly well. They are such freaking great tools. But the medication only addresses your appetite. It does not actually build what makes the results permanent. It doesn't fix the actual reason you're this big. It's a temporary fix. And as long as you go for these shortcuts, which are not actually shortcuts because they don't fix the result in the end, you will have temporary results. And so until you do fix why you're this big permanently at the root, every single result, every pound you lose will be temporary. And this is like yo-yo dieting on steroids, because GLP-1 drugs change what is possible. But the medication is a tool, it's not a system. It's not the fix, it's a tool. So the MROI method is what the medication is trying to replicate. That is what it's trying to do. The metabolic phase of the MROI method is exactly what Ozempic is trying to do. It's trying to get you insulin sensitive and get you losing those first couple pounds. The thing is, without the full method, you're not actually going to be able to keep the results off permanently. Another one, I've tried coaches before, but nothing held. Or I've tried programs before. I've tried workout PDFs, nothing held. That's because it's not built for you. This specific program is built for somebody over 230 pounds, over 240 pounds, built for people who are 300 pounds, 350 pounds, 400 pounds. Personal trainers do not address insulin resistance. They do not help with your diet. Calorie apps do not fix your accountability, and GLP-1 prescriptions do not build the identity architecture that makes you want to do this for the rest of your life. If so far being in shape, being healthy has felt like a chore, that is a problem, and that is what the identity phase is built for in the MROI method. So the sequence has been wrong this entire time. And my codex, which the MROI method is within my codex, which is my entire coaching framework, fixes the environment first. So everything else follows from that, and that is what makes this different from everything else, not just motivationally different. Because as much as I can speak passionately and try to get you to actually try something that is proven to work, you actually have to do it. Motivation doesn't work long term. Accountability, structure, and the MROI method do. Now, I do have an offer for you. So you will lose a minimum of 50 pounds guaranteed, or I will work with you for free until you do. Now, the only caveat, because I do have to protect myself here, is I need 80% compliance on the MROI method. If you can do that for me, which I can track all that, if you can do that for me, you will lose a minimum of 50 pounds, guaranteed. And I offer this because my system works when the sequence is correct. It works when you fully commit and when you fully implement it. Because every phase builds the environment the next phase runs inside. So what you see is you build a foundation and then you can just freaking take off and the fat just burns off faster than ever. So when all of this is in place, the result of losing 50, 100, 150 pounds is not a question of if, it's when. So this is what I call the Codex. This is my full coaching program. And this is direct one-on-one with me. I don't have an assistant coach. I don't give you workout random PDFs. This is not a group coaching cohort, and it's not AI coaching. Everything is customized, built by me for you. We have a one-on-one relationship. Every week we'll talk. So in this, you can see the full offer here. I'm not going to bore you. You can pause the video and read through it should you like. The biggest one here is the 50-pound guarantee, or I will work with you for free. So how to get started with this is click the link below in the description of this video and you'll book a call in with me, specifically me, and we'll talk about your situation and we'll come up with a game plan from there. So we'll get on a 45-minute call. We'll go through what you've tried, your goals, your needs, your roadblocks, and then we'll create a game plan going forward together. And look, if this is not the right fit, I will tell you exactly what I think the right next for you is. So regardless, you leave knowing more than you did walking in. And the worst case out of this, you book a call with me and we talk for 30 to 45 minutes. We meet, we get to know each other. You have honest direction from somebody who actually has been your size, probably bigger, and solved it completely for myself and others. So if you want to get on a call with me, chat about how we can create a game plan, why things have not worked for you, and then talk about what it would look like to move forward, then we can do that. And all you got to do is just book a call in the description with me and we'll chat. So I'll see you there.